So I guess this is the big question then. Is there a way the U.S. can decouple from China? Is there a way to get U.S. businesses out of China and maybe ideally even back to the U.S.?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And it's actually not that hard. It wouldn't be that difficult or that costly, but it will require a big change in mindset. So, on the one hand, yeah, we have American industry has substantial investment in China. But, hey, we had substantial investment in Germany before World War II, and somehow we managed to fight a war. I'm not going to suggest that we're going fully in that direction with China, but my point is that these comparisons are always relative. And I think that what we very much need to do in the U.S. is actually to study, the industrial policy kind of thinking that Japan and the Tigers and now China have adopted. And so I've been looking at the semiconductor industry recently. I have a background in the industry. So semiconductors are a product that requires little labor, almost no labor. The labor cost in a chip is in the order of 1 or 2% of the total cost. And so if you're an economist and you're thinking about a country like the United States, which has expensive labor, but which has a lot of capital, a country like the U.S. would be expected to be producing capital-intensive and technology-intensive products. That's what we're supposed to be good at. And yet, if you look at the record, in 1991, about a third of all of the semiconductors produced in the world were produced in the U.S. Today, it's about 13%. And you scratch your head and you say, wait a minute, that's supposed to be what we're good at. How is it that we're losing market share? And it can't be labor cost. So what is it? So BCG actually Boston Consulting Group has done a study recently of the cost of building a factory. In the semiconductor industry, they call factories fabs, fabrication locations. So today, just to give you an example, back in 1981, when I first got into the game, a fab in Silicon Valley, you could probably buy it for maybe $50 million. Today, you're talking at 12, 13 billion for a single fab. You look at, it shouldn't cost a lot more to build a fab in the US than it does in South Korea or Japan or Taiwan or China. But actually, BCG found that building a fab in South Korea is significantly less expensive than building one in the US. And same is true also in Taiwan. How can that be? Well, one reason is because these governments have programs under which they can effectively give away land. So, to build a fab, you got to have a lot of land. Somebody has to pay for the land. Well, if you get a government grant to pay for the land, that reduces your cost. $12 billion you need to sink into equipment and construction. But hey, if a government is willing to put up $3 or $4 billion, that helps. Singapore has a thing called the Economic Development Board, EDB. And I was working with a company that makes a component for producing semiconductors in Silicon Valley. And the Koreans were targeting that product. They're beginning to dramatically increase their exports into the U.S. market. So the CEO of that company came to me and he said, what can I do about these Koreans? And I said, well, let's go to Washington. Let's talk to the trade rep. Let's talk to the Secretary of Commerce, see if we can get them to look into anti-dumping or other legal methods that we might use. Well, at the same time, Singapore's Economic Development Board was sending officials to Silicon Valley to meet with the CEO of this company. And they said, hey, we know the Koreans are after you. And why don't you move your production to Singapore so we can help you undercut the Koreans? Well, how can you do that? Well, we can give you the land free, no taxes for 25 years, utilities at half cost. Oh, and yeah, how much does your plant cost? $5 billion. We could put up $1 billion. So the Irish Development Board, the Singapore Economic Development Board, Chinese Economic Development, governments all over the world have techniques and money available to effectively subsidize development of key industries. The U.S. has not done that yet, but we could do it. And that's, I think, the direction that it's going to have to go.
Why does the U.S. not do it?
Well, first of all, because if you did it, it would imply that you have an industrial policy. And the term industrial policy is a curse word in advanced economic circles. So you don't want to use the term industrial policy if you're studying for a PhD at Harvard, for example, in economics. It's just a bad word. And actually, it's a bad word with CEOs, too. The CEOs like to think that they control their companies. And industrial policy means, the government is going to be in my game. And I don't like the government. And then there's a third element, which is really emotional and kind of peculiarly American. But Americans hate government. A sure laugh line. Go someplace and give a speech. A sure laugh line is, I'm Clyde Prestowitz. I'm here from the government. I'm here to help. Ha, ha, ha. That'll bring down the house every time. Nobody believes the government is here to help. And so there's just an inbred, antagonism toward government industrial policy, government direction. I mean, look, people not getting vaccinated. They don't want the government to tell them to get vaccinated. It's the same phenomenon in business as well.
Yeah, of course, the irony is that we do have an industrial policy, which is free trade in a way that has completely hollowed out American manufacturing over the last 2 decades.
Absolutely. No, you got it. I was thinking about this the other night because Tom Friedman had a piece in the Times day before yesterday. Maybe you saw it on the editorial page of the Times. And Tom was arguing that he's so afraid of where the U.S.-China confrontation is going. It's dangerous. We need to find a way to soften things up. And Tom was arguing that, hey, this whole coupling with China has been okay. A few American manufacturing workers have lost their jobs, but hey, consumers are getting cheap goods, and exporters are exporting like crazy to China, and it's really been very good, for the U.S. And I started thinking about it. And I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe I get cheaper shirts if I buy shirts that are made in China than I would get if the shirts were made in the U.S. But that means that shirt maker, that job has to go to China. Now, interestingly, if you study economics, the theory of free trade assumes that workers don't move. It assumes that there's no cross-border flow of workers. And so if I'm really a free trader, then I should not accept or want those jobs to move to China. And this, I'm using Tom's name because he's well known, but he's just representing the majority kind of econometric view in the United States, and certainly among journalists. And so globalization, of course, Tom famously says the world is flat. And globalization then implies that, hey, you manufacture wherever it's cheap to manufacture, and you sell where you can and so forth. But what people don't understand is that globalization in many respects is contrary to free trade and the benefits that we think we get from free trade. So it's all mixed up. It's a really mixed up argument.
Well, so it seems like the American people are sort of stuck between the whims of big governments around the world, as well as the desires of big corporations. Is there anything the people watching this podcast can do to actually be involved to make change?
Well, it requires a change in the way that our broadly that our policymakers are educated. And a critical point is for watchers to understand what you said, that as American citizens, our future is to a very significant extent being determined not in Washington and not in the corporate suites of American corporations, but in Beijing and in Singapore and by state-owned corporations of other countries. Americans typically are concerned about national security, and Americans typically are willing to pay for weapons. And despite their withdrawal from Afghanistan, we still maintain an enormous military establishment around the world. We're willing to pay for security. What we need to understand is that security is not just a gun. A semiconductor is more important weapon in the security game than a gun. The guns need semiconductors. And so if you want to maintain your independence and your security, you need to maintain American leadership in semiconductor technology and manufacturing. And to maintain that, you need to match what the other governments are willing to put on the table. And this is not, it's not rocket science. I mean, go back again to World War II. In 1940, the American shipbuilding industry made something like 100 ships. And in 1945, it made something like 10,000. You have to get your mind concentrated on what the real security question is and then go for that.